Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me here for presenting what the Reporters Without Borders are doing. We are all war reporters now. These are the words of the President of the Union of Ukrainian Journalists a few days after the war broke out, which Sala Nazarenko had organized a meeting on the internet with him. Reporters Without Borders was established in 1986, defending press freedom, defending freedom of speech, but also being very practical about these things. So one of the first things that Reporters Without Borders did when the war broke out was establishing two press freedom centers in Ukraine. One in March in Kiev and another one in first in Lviv and then in Kiev in May. As Matti mentioned, there is an index published every year listing 180 countries in an order. There are five ways to measure press freedom and freedom of speech. Only 8 countries have received the green light. The rest are pink or red or dark red. At the very end are countries like North Korea and I think Afghanistan and some other ones. Russia had the position of 164, Belarus 157, and Ukraine on 79, so it is better in spite of the war. I would like to thank Miroslava and I would like to thank Andrei for giving us the inside view of what is happening in Ukraine and some of the practical things that journalists are facing. Because I haven't been to the war in Ukraine, but I was for 10 years following the wars on the Balkans. And there is no bigger challenge for a journalist than to try to get to the backbone of what is happening, why it is happening, understanding, you mentioned Miroslava, and also presenting it in an understandable way to other people. And the curiosity is the driving force, because without the curiosity, you will never really get to the point of what is happening. We have all been following the war in Ukraine, but I remember in 2002, I'm old enough to remember all those old things, you know. There was the NATO summit in Prague, and at that point, Kuchma wasn't very popular anymore on the international scene, so they changed the seating order, because otherwise US and United Kingdom would have been sitting next to Ukraine. They didn't want to do that. So they put it according to the French alphabet. So it was États-Unis, and it was in a different way then, that they could be seated and not had to sit next to Kuchma. We have been following the war in Ukraine very, very heavily. There is a deep sympathy. There is also a little bit of a worry that people will by time get more tired of the whole thing. We all know what happened with things in the Middle East. We know what happens with many other wars in the world. Since February, when the war broke out, there have been 12,000 international journalists reporting from Ukraine. That is quite a lot. I don't know if there has been any. If that is not a record, I would be surprised. In these press centers, they are mainly supporting Ukrainian journalists. 80% of the people who come there, the journalists who come there, they come for borrowing gear that they need in the field. It can be flak jackets, it can be helmets, it can be phones, or it can be some other equipment that you really need when you're out in the field. There have been the RSF, the Reporters Without Borders, have listed 50 events, 50 occasions when journalists have been shelled or fired at, and more than half of these cases, they say, have been done deliberately with purpose to kill or maim a journalist. That is highly worrying. We also publish every year the indexes in the spring, then we have something called the roundup at the end of the year. And every year we report on journalists being killed, journalists being missing, being abducted, or just lost in action, nobody knows where they are. This has been an increasing amount all the time. More and more the journalists that are targeted are female, and that is an international trend. I was also thinking about what you said, Andrea, about own eyes. You know, we live in this world when you can go on the Google and you can go on Wikipedia and you can check here and there and you can read other papers. But there is nothing that can replace the eyes in the field, the own eyes in the field. And that is why foreign reporting should be even more emphasized. I mean, reporting from international countries, because we also gain the perspective when we are following different countries more closely over a period of time and not just dumping down when something happens. You have, like, you know, the tsunami in Aceh, or you have the wars now in Ukraine, in the Balkans, whatever. But you benefit from seeing the whole perspective. I would like to end to say that about press freedom and freedom of speech. This is not something that you have and then you have it forever. Take the case of Finland. We used to be on number 2. We are now number 5. And on this position 5, on the 5 indicators, Finland has fallen, especially when it comes to the security of journalists and the legal frame within which the journalists are working. So the freedom of speech, you have to defend it every day. And the press freedom and the freedom of speech is not like something very nice to have in the country as such. It is one of the cornerstones of a democratic country, and it should always be respected as that, but never taken for granted. Thank you very much.